Check out what a trauma therapist said to me last week. She said, therapists, why do they only ever get recognized right when their leadership realizes that they're about to quit? And then everyone on our Brave call nodded, right? So I decided to make a video about it. And today we're going to talk about this and why self-care programs are barely scratching the surface when it comes to actually reducing burnout for trauma therapists. Before we get into that, real quick, if you don't know me yet, hi, I'm Jenny Hughes. I'm a trauma psychologist and founder of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective, which is a place where we make sure that trauma therapists actually have something left for themselves at the end of each day. So let's start where you are actually living this, perhaps even right now, or at the very least in the recesses of your career, okay? I'm talking about that wellness email that goes out after a tough quarter and the pizza party that shows up the same week 3 people on your team are talking about leaving, or those self-care reminders from leadership as you look around the weekly meeting and everyone is checked out. Or all those appreciation days and months that ultimately just feel awkward, not because you're so freaking cynical or ungrateful, but because you can tell the difference between genuinely supporting you and realizing way too late that clinicians are burned out and about to walk out the door. Both situations might involve pizza, but only one of them is actually about you. And listen, those pizza parties, they do land sometimes, seriously. And they land only when they're built on a foundation that's already there, when there's been that ongoing acknowledgement, and when an organization has already shown in real ways over time that the people doing the work matter. In that context, the pizza is a celebration. But in a different context, that same pizza is signaling panic, and you can feel the difference, right? So if therapists are reading these situations accurately and the wellness initiatives still aren't landing, the question then becomes, why does this keep happening? Why do organizations keep rolling out programs that don't actually help? It's not because they don't care. Leadership really does care about the clinicians doing the work in their organization. It's actually something way bigger than that and way bigger than them. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But before I tell you about it, tell me in the comments, what's the best support that an employer has done for you in your career? What is one of those moments that really stands out when you knew it was genuine? Let's start putting them here so we can pay it forward to all the viewers. All right, so here's the structural reality of self-care and burnout in the mental health field. It starts with a completely broken healthcare system in this country and across the world, one that is broken in ways no individual or organization can fix. And you know what I'm talking about, the reimbursement rates that have not kept pace with inflation in over a decade, productivity demands that do not account for the actual emotional labor of trauma work or the actual time it takes to do them. Documentation, another one, a burden that just grows while sessions stay the same length. And then the workforce shortages everywhere. People can't even get a call back from therapists from Psychology Today because everyone is booked out. And these are not problems that any clinical director created, and they are not problems that any clinical director can solve from where they're standing. Not even the leader of your organization can do that. So watch what happens. The broken healthcare system passes the burden down to organizations. Organizations can't fix that shit either. They're operating inside the same broken structure, so they pass it down to clinical teams. Clinical teams, where do they pass it? To the individual clinicians. And then by the time the burden lands on the person who's actually doing the work, actually sitting with the trauma survivor, it has been passed down through 3 to 4 layers of a broken system that none of those layers can fix from where they're standing. What a mess, right? Now, imagine someone hands this clinician down here a meditation app subscription as the solution. Here's your free subscription to this fancy meditation app. That math does not math, y'all. You can't yoga your way out of a structural collapse. And I'm someone who does yoga all the time. You can't bubble bath your way through reimbursement rates that haven't kept pace with the cost of living in over a decade. The wellness program is being asked to carry weight that is 4 levels higher than it was ever designed to carry. It's just not strong enough for that. And I know how easy it is to vilify the organizations because they are the most tangible part of this broken system that we have. But for the most part, it's not their fault. I already said this, I will say it again and again. The majority of leaders out there are operating inside the same broken system, and they're doing the best they can with the tools they were given. And that is not a cop-out. That is not shirking their responsibility. They do want to do good work and to support the people that are down here doing the work with the clients. The point here that I'm making is that the framing itself fails because when we offer individual solutions down here to systemic problems, that math just does not work, no matter how good that intent is. So that's the version of the problem that's frustrating, but it's not actually personal. It's the well-meaning leader who generally doesn't know what else to do. So they go and roll out that wellness program because that's what they see every other organization doing. But there's a sharper version of the same pattern, one where the structural pressure flowing downwards starts to get weaponized right down here. It gets turned around and used against the very clinicians who are trying to ask for something sustainable in their job. And we have to talk about it. It's what I call weaponized self-care. And it's what happens when, oh, you should take better care of yourself, stops being an offer and starts pointing the finger at you for being burned out. Let's get even more specific here, okay? So as a therapist, you asked for protected admin time to write notes, right? To do your treatment planning, to return those calls and emails that your clients send you. These are all things that are required for your job, but they're not billable. So the response you get is, well, you need to manage your time better. That's why you only have 50-minute sessions. What a gift, only 50 minutes. Or you ask for more support with a complex case, and the response you get is, oh, have you talked to your therapist about your countertransference yet? Or this one, maybe this could be the most common. You work up the courage to tell your supervisor that your caseload's too heavy. And what do you get back? They tell you to use the mindfulness app that's paid for by the organization between sessions to help manage all that stress, right? These are not hypothetical. I'm willing to bet that you've been on the receiving end of at least one of them because these happen every single week in our field and in so many other helping fields. And they've been told directly to me by members of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective, and I have lived this stuff too. I wrote about it years ago in that blog post where I first named weaponized self-care. Check it out. The link to that blog post is below. And I'm not going to go in and recreate the whole story here. That's what the link is in the description. But let me tell you what I learned. The moment self-care stops being something you can choose and starts being something leadership uses to deflect from a structural problem, it has stopped being care. It's become the system protecting itself by passing the responsibility back down to you. And this matters even more for trauma therapists specifically, because think about what we do. The work itself involves regularly being asked to hold what has not been validated by other systems for our clients. We sit with these clients who haven't been believed, whose pain has been minimized for years before they finally got the courage to walk into our office. We are often the first people who've taken their experience seriously. So when weaponized self-care lands on a trauma therapist, it becomes this parallel process. The clinician now experiences inside their own workplace the same dynamic of your suffering is your responsibility to manage, or it's not that bad, right? Our clients have been told that for years. That's what we're getting too. And this parallel process is not subtle, and it does a lot of damage. So we've talked about the pattern. We've named the ladder, right? All these rungs and the harm at its sharpest point. Now I want to show you what it looks like on the flip side when an organization actually gets this right, because that does happen more than you may realize. And it's worth knowing what's possible out there because that's the standard we should all be aiming for. So I had coffee recently with a therapist who had just transitioned out of a group practice and into her own private practice. And it was such a different story than what I'm used to hearing. And so I was so curious. I asked her so many questions because she left not because she was burned out or had been pushed out or had any negativity within this group practice. She left because she got to a point in her career where she realized she wanted to use the time in her schedule that had been for leadership activities for her own writing and teaching and creative pursuits instead. That was it. That was the only reason she left the group practice. She just wanted something different for herself. And she left that practice with the owner's genuine support and love. She told me it was one of the healthiest goodbyes she has ever experienced. And it was the kind of goodbye that only happens when the relationship is already built on actual care, not a retention strategy. So here's what was different. The owner of the group practice didn't wait until this therapist was ready to leave to recognize her. The recognition was already there. It was woven into the culture and throughout the relationship. The support of clinicians' nervous systems in this practice is ongoing and holistic, not just deployed at the moment of crisis. So when this therapist needed to make a change for her own life, leadership could meet that with celebration instead of panicking and freaking out. And this is exactly why I have shifted a lot of my work towards training groups and organizations in the BRAVE method of vicarious trauma, vicarious resilience, and trauma-informed leadership. Because it's not about one-time wellness webinars or self-care PDFs. It's about changing structural frameworks within our systems and doing that in a way where leadership and clinicians get to learn together. So this means the whole team has shared language for what's actually happening in trauma-exposed work. And here's what it looks like in practice. The BRAVE method has a core training, which brings the whole team into the name it, tame it, reframe it framework together. Clinicians and leaderships in the same room, learning the same language, building shared practices that they can actually use in supervision and in their day-to-day work. From there, organizations can take it a step further through trauma-informed leadership practices and training. And this is where the leaders learn how to translate the framework into their supervision, their feedback, their decision-making, and the systems that they are responsible for so that this doesn't become another binder on the shelf after the training, okay? It instead becomes how the organization just operates. That's their foundation. And the point of all of this is that when the system around a therapist is supporting them to be human in the work, instead of demanding that they manufacture their own sustainability all by themselves, the math finally starts to math. What a concept. So where does that leave you? If you're a trauma therapist sitting in a system that hasn't figured this out yet, well, let me tell you, you cannot single-handedly fix the healthcare system. You probably can't fix your organization on your own, and that's not even your job. But it doesn't mean you're powerless either. And I have this conversation over and over again when I do the BRAVE method training. The first thing you can do is you can stop accepting the message that your burnout is evidence of a self-care failure. You can refuse the script that says you should be able to absorb a 4-level structural problem with better breathing exercises. You can recognize weaponized self-care when it's happening and stop turning the blame inward onto yourself. And maybe you can share this video with whoever it is in your organization that does have the ability to affect systems level change. Maybe it's that amazing clinical director who's you see is working so hard to figure out why this wellness stuff isn't working. Or your practice owner who can see the burnout starting to build in your weekly meeting, but maybe just doesn't know what to do. The leaders of your workplace really want to do better. They just haven't been given the right framework yet. They might be more ready for this conversation than you even realize. So remember, being human in this work means refusing the message that your humanity is the problem. And it also means giving the people around you, including leadership, the tools to be human alongside you. So here's what I want to leave you with. If you're a leader, a director, a practice owner, and you're watching this, or if you're a clinician, a trauma therapist forwarding this to one, there's a link in the description to learn more about the BRAVE method and to where you can book a conversation about what this could look like in your organization. I want to help you build teams where therapists actually stay because the system around them has finally caught up to the reality of the work. Now, before you go, drop one more comment and just tell me, have you watched this pattern play out in your organization? Or have you been somewhere that actually got it right? You can even just drop a 1 if you've seen all this play out in your work, and a 2 if you've been somewhere that got it right. Thank you so much for being part of our work here at Brave. I'll catch you in the next video.